You can find all the deck lists in the video and more at the link in the description down below. Let's get started. It's that time again. It's the end of the weekend, and there have been 3 unique Pioneer challenges played on Magic the Gathering Online. So we're going to take a look back at Saturday and Sunday's challenges and see what pilots have been cooking up in the Pioneer format. Saturday saw a 32-player challenge, which is a little bit smaller than we're used to seeing for Pioneer, but with a lot of things going on and standard looking spicy, I'm not all too surprised to see things dwindling down a little bit on a Saturday afternoon. However, the top 8 here consisted of first place Selesnya Company, second place was Niv-to-Light, which is not an unfamiliar deck to see in the top 8, but not one we usually see taking or splitting the finals. Rakdos Demons was in 3rd and 4th place, John's Sacrifice took 5th place with the inclusion of Legion Extruder, which is kind of seemingly a stock inclusion now. It's being able to have a sacrifice outlet for your artifact tokens like a Mega Golem just kind of fits into the game plan a little bit better. A very cool Dimir Waste Knot / Bounce deck taking 6th place, and then Rakdos Prowess in 7th with Azorius Spirits taking the 8th place spot. And of course, I need to mention this Waste Knot variant cracking the top 8 of the challenge, because if I didn't, then who the hell would I actually be? It's not Optimus Tom, that's for sure. Now, this Dimir version of the deck took the old Pioneer Waste Knot list and kind of smushed it together with the more recent Dimir Pixie Cut or the Dimir Bounce list that's in Standard, actually favoring that Bounce shell a little bit more than the Waste Knot part of it. Now, there were, of course, 4 copies of Waste Knot in the list, which enabled the deck to continue spinning its wheels when combined with cards like This Town Ain't Big Enough and other things like Hopeless Nightmare and Tiny Bones joins up, removing the more targeted discard spells that were not named Thoughtseize, because the deck still had 4 of those, obviously, for ones that gave more of a Raven's Crime feeling opponent's choice of discard spell. Now, looping these spells with a Storm Chaser's talent in play means that you can amass a small army of growing otters to beat down your opponent as they have no cards in hand to deal with them. The mana base still had the Gaia Reach Sanitarium, even though there were no Sheoldreds in sight in the 75 card list. However, the deck did wind up running Narset Parter Avails in the sideboard, which does allow for like that soft lock against the longer games and control style matchups if you activate the Sanitarium in their upkeep to leave them empty-handed, and then they can't draw their card for the turn. Now, another Dimir deck actually wound up making the top 16, going more towards the Demons package, but also incorporated some of the greatest hits from the standard mid-range version of the deck. I'm talking cards like Fairy Mastermind and Floodpit Drowner, joining the ranks of cards like Blade of the Oni and Unholy Annex as the demon package in this deck. Now, being a Dimir deck and a mid-range shell, it of course wound up running 3 Kaito Bane of Nightmares, but this deck did do something a little bit different and incorporated a combo that we haven't seen for a little while in the Pioneer format, that is Valki God of Lies, not being combined with Bring to Light, but being combined with Jace Reawakened so that we can plot the spell and then replay it as Tibalt later on. This gave this deck not only a powerful play early on in the game, but it gave it a more longevity style reach that could wind up playing a bit slower style of game than some of the other more tempo style decks we've seen Dimir try to break into the Pioneer format with. Of course, we still wind up having a big package of Mutavaults and stuff to make sure these Unholy Annexes turned online, and there was a Singleton Tiny Bones the Pickpocket in the list, just I guess to tug at my heartstrings a little bit. The sideboard did wind up seeing a lot of black targeted removal spells, as well as running 4 full copies of Leyline of the Void, because this deck did not want to see anything coming out of the graveyard unless it was off the back of its own Tiny Bones. Now, Sunday had 2 challenges that I'm going to wind up going over together as the top 8 before hitting the decks I want to talk about in both of them, since there was a specific list that wound up being across both top 8s that I really want to touch upon. Now, Sunday morning had 48 players in our challenge, so we're back up to the number of players that we normally expect to see in these challenges, somewhere around the high 40s, maybe even low 50s, where Rakdos Prowess took both 1st and 5th place, John's Sacrifice was in 2nd place, Selesnya Company was in 4th, Enigmatic Incarnation, but mostly the Esper Color Overlords was in 6th, Rakdos Demons was in 7th, and Niv-to-Light was in 8th. Now, I've left out what was in third place because this deck also wound up taking first place in the Sunday Night Challenge, which was up to 58 players, and that is a Simic deck running Neoform and Abhorrent Oculus. Now, the rest of Sunday Night's top 8 included a Selesnya Company list in the finals, Rakdos Prowess in 3rd and 5th, so the Prowess decks are again picking up speed, so to speak, a Green Devotion list not running any ley lines, again taking the 4th place slot, with Rakdos Demons in 6th, another Enigmatic Incarnation in 7th, and a Boros Hammer deck, or Boros Equipment, rounding out the top 8 in 8th place. All right, let's talk about this Neoform Oculus deck that wound up taking a top 4 and then taking the entire challenge over the course of 2 of them on Sunday. The Neoform Oculus deck is a newer take on the decks looking to, put the undercosted eyeball into play ahead of schedule, but this time it's got a little bit of a backup plan in case the graveyard is under threat. Now, going Simic instead of going for Azorius like the standard versions of the deck, or Dimir like the modern versions of the deck, this is leveraging a package of 2-drop utility creatures in order to stock our graveyard to normally cast the Oculus. However, it also finds its other namesake card, Neoform, and then transforms the 2-cost fodder that is providing utility to find these cards into the flying eye in the sky. Now, Augur of Bolas and Thundertrap Trainer, which if you put them on top of each other, look very, very similar, just one's a little furrier and cuter, find Neoform with their ETB triggers, while cards like Satyr Wayfinder and Phalaji Archaeologist, try saying that 5 times fast, can help fill the graveyard and find lands or spells in order to cast our Oculus naturally. Now, cheap interaction like Essence Flux, Tyvar's Stand, and Stubborn Denial, which is great alongside an active Oculus, protect it and its Goring army, while Fading Hope can clear the way or save the day, depending on how you need to use it. Now, this lower to the ground take on the classic delve creature strategy that would put an Atraxa into play ASAP off of a Neoform leans more into the fast-paced Simic Beanstalk style list that decks have been using in Standard, only you're not running this town at big enough because you don't really want to bounce your utility creatures or anything. You're just running the 1 mana unsummon type effects to clear a path or save your Abhorrent Oculus instead. Now, Boros Hammer, which might be more like Boros Equipment when you sit down and look at the 12 different artifact equipments that this deck is bringing to the battlefield, snagged 8th place with a list that I've seen floating around F&M tables for a little while, but it's gotten a big boost in power thanks to a combination of Leyline Hacks from Foundations and the first of our soon-to-be 2 World Championship cards from Javier Dominguez, which is Fervent Champion. Now, the equipment newly released in Foundations offers the same turn 0 play pattern that other namesake Leylines offer, usually not being a threat until we hit the 3 mana that is required to equip the axe. However, Fervent Champion's ability to reduce equip cost by 3 mana means that the axe is free. So a 2/2 double striking trample threat on turn 1 with haste means you're going to be praying if you're the opponent that you have fatal pushes and torch the towers in your opening hand, lest you be facing down lethal damage by like turn 2 or 3. Now, the classic combination of Sigarda's Aid and Colossus Hammer still exists to flash in an additional 10 power at any given point, while Sheltered by Ghosts, Swiftfoot Boots, and Thran Power Suit, that's one I had to look up from Brothers War, provide ways that we can attach protection to our creatures. Kellen the Fey-Blooded is a staple card across lists like this archetype runs, as the adventure side finds an equipment or aura that you may need to close out games or save your creatures on the battlefield, while the Kellen creature side provides an anthem effect on a slightly larger board so long as your equipment and auras are on the 2/2 that does have double strike itself. Now, Sunday morning's challenge also gave us an Orzhov mid-range list from Pilot Mazrim, not Pirate, getting the 11th place out of the top 16 decks, using what looks like a combination of the greatest hits across the years of Pioneer in the Orzhov colors. Now, Zoraline Cosmos Caller is a notable card, as this deck doesn't leverage many bats, actually any at all besides Zoraline, nor does it have any cards to really recur from the graveyard besides Skyclave Apparition and a singleton Kervek the Punisher. Well, and Unstoppable Slasher, but that kind of just comes back on its own anyway. Well, regardless of this, the rest of the deck utilizes a Bloodletter of Aclazotz and Unholy Annex alongside the Slasher, so you have that angle of attack to close games very quickly, while Shoulder the Apocalypse and a Blood Baron of Vizcapa, which is not the first time I think I've mentioned this card on one of these Pioneer kind of deck lookovers from the challenges, but these sit at the top of the curve of the deck. Notably absent with all this light game floating around, though, is Elenda from Foundations, which was in the Niv to Light lists as a multicolored target, which means it could be an interesting exclusion. You could include it because we have all these different sort of light gain effects and just naturally gaining life from effects as they enter the battlefield or draw your own cards. Now, this is a Yorion deck, which helps pack both Liliana of the Veil and the Wandering Emperor in this list, alongside interactive spells like Fatal Push, Thoughtseize, Vanishing Verse, and actually Ossification as part of this removal package, which does mean that Yorion is going to be bolstering the amount of basic lands that we have to hopefully have a target to ossify something for. That's what Pioneer was looking like this past weekend, so what has you excited about the format? What decks do you want to try, and which ones looked the most interesting to you? Of course, as I mentioned, the deck techs are in the description down below, and while you're there, you can leave a comment and let me know what you're excited to play or not excited to play against. Of course, you could also like the video with a quick thumbs up while you are down there so that you could show the fact that you are still pushing and pulling for Pioneer content. Now, I do want to take a moment to shout out all of my members over here. Now, they, of course, make this video specifically, as well as all the other videos on my channel possible, thanks to their continued support. If you would like to join this list and get benefits of the members, such as early access to content, personal deck techs, or Discord access to have a direct line to me, you can click the join button down below the video or on the homepage of my YouTube channel so that you too can show your devotion. And as always, you can just tap that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest deck techs, metagame analysis, and just in general, Magic content and review from myself. So, see you in the Pioneer queues, everybody.